Thank you for showing up to the Perspective Shift. I am Frank Daly.
And I'm Mike Hitless.
We are the host of this show. This is our first transmission, so I hope everyone's excited and enjoys it. So today's topic of conversation is going to be about your subconscious.
Before we jump into the subconscious, we're going to talk about the 4 laws, as Frank and I see it, that truly govern what reality we live in. So I'll let Frank kind of start with those 4 realities.
All right, so I'm just going to break them down. It's very simple. We later on will probably have other transmissions actually just focusing on these 4 laws, but just to get them out of the way to understand the basis. The first law is existence. If you exist now, you always existed and you forever will exist, and there's nothing you can do about that. So think about that as much as you want, but if you're sitting there thinking about it, you exist. So you can move on to the next one. The second law is the one is the all are the one. It means you can have an individual experience, but we're all tied in together having a collective collaboration experience, but yet an individual can have an individual experience. So the one is the all are the one. We're all connected, but yet we can always seemingly separate, all right? The third law is the law of attraction, or the law of what you put out is what you get back. So law of attraction is a very popular one within the physical world in which we live in, because it's how we get the things we want to experience and achieve. The fourth law is change is the only constant except for the first 3 laws that govern this universe. So that's just a brief overview of the 4 laws. Anyone watching this, if you have any questions about them, we can actually go intricately into each law. We could spend as much time as you want on to understand it, but we're just laying it out because that's the governance of what we're going to talk about from this moment on, okay? Now, let's talk about the subconscious.
Going into the subconscious is important. We live 95% of our life in our subconscious. 5% of our actual living life is us consciously thinking. So the subconscious plays a huge role. Biggest thing about the subconscious is it is the way in which we feel about ourselves without control. It is a way, it is a means of the subconscious. I would describe it as those thoughts that you have when you first roll out of bed in the morning. The subconscious is the thoughts that you feel like you cannot escape at times. A good way to talk about the subconscious would probably be, Frank, I'll let you kind of jump in.
Yeah, so exactly what he said. Another way of saying it, it's our programmed mind. It's our habitual mind. And, we do, again, there are scientists that prove this. I'm not sure exactly how, but we actually, when we hear the information, it is somewhat validated. Our life is mainly run by our subconscious. When we're conscious, we can override it, but if you're driving your car, it's a good thing your subconscious is aware of how to drive and what to see. So what we're talking about here is if 95% of our life is run by our subconscious, but yet there's dissatisfaction in your life, well, what do? Where did these programs come from? Well, they came from birth up till the point in which we're right now, and pretty much they came from people that told us this is how things are done, and it's just programs put into our download, if you will, all right? That being said, people are like, well, how do I get rid of them? Well, it's not so much we get rid of them, it's that we can override them. And what I mean is, if you had a reel of tape, and that's all you had was one reel of tape, and there was, say, a track of music on it, you can actually go back and record over it. So you don't get rid of it, you replace it. It's in the universe we live in an inclusion universe only, so getting rid of something is impossible. But what we can do is replace it. So part of what we're talking about here is different concepts of understanding. So it is possible, there's different modalities out there that can get rid of your subconscious. One modality seen a lot of these days is meditation, actually in the form of what we call guided meditation. All right, one day we'll actually do a talk through that. So, obviously that's how me and Mike met at this guided meditation service. So, so understanding how the subconscious, what it is, and know that you can change it is the first and foremost thing that we need to know. And then how do we change it? Well, again, there's a multitudes of modalities. I'm going to discuss a couple. One modality is not better than the other. It's what your preference is to modality. So if it's a certain type of meditation, it could be other things in meditation, hypnosis, which is a form of meditation. Whatever strikes a chord with you, whatever you feel passionate about, that would be the particular modality I would choose for you at that moment in time, because it's resonating. That's your higher self resonating to what to do. Don't try to find out what is the best modality. The best modality is the modality that comes to you easiest, all right? So me and Mike, we're gonna discuss a little about the modality of the kind of meditation we do in the imagination aspect of it, all right? Raising our frequency using our imagination. So I'm gonna have Mike kick off talking about an experience that you may have had with one of these sessions we've done.
I guess for me, my modality, if you will, to understand my subconscious was absolutely through guided meditation, like Frank was saying. So the subconscious, it's what we're thinking about even when we know we're not thinking, or even when it's what we're thinking about when we're not even thinking. So it's the thoughts that are constantly going left, right, however you want, in one ear, out the other. How do you quiet those thoughts? Well, one thing we're never taught really is, I guess you could say, the power of our minds. And so with the power of our minds, we have the absolute ability to stop or choose, if you will, not necessarily stop, choose what thoughts we allow to fire. The thoughts that we allow to fire are the thoughts that we will ultimately see reflected in our daily life. What I mean by that is, you think you're having a bad day, you don't understand why it's not getting any better, and you feel it. It's a thought, it's a feeling, etc. You will only receive that in one way, the way you're putting it out, I guess. To kind of get back to what I was saying, modality, meditation. So an experience for me personally, when I kind of understood that this all clicked for me, was, I'm trying to think, I don't even have like a good example.
Well, it's kind of like, a couple of times like we discussed this, and so when you go into, if you've never meditated before, it's kind of like when you were daydreaming and you envision something. Perhaps you're sitting in a dark room and you're in Detroit in December and it's freezing out, it's cold, and you just close your eyes to, like, say, Hawaii. And even if you've never been there, most people, if they'd seen any type of movie like Hawaii Five-0 or whatever, can imagine what Hawaii is like. You know, even if you've never seen it, you've heard of it. So if you literally close your eyes to the outside world and picture yourself in Hawaii on the beach, what it'll do is it'll change the shift of energy, how you feel, right? So when that changes, what happens is frequencies in our bodies change, and then we're privy to information on how to then transmit to get to the place of Hawaii. If it's a lofty dream, you're going to get there and it's like getting ready to press the button to buy the airline tickets, but you just shut the computer off. Most of us live in that visual world or imaginary world to where we never get to the place where we actually take the action on the first step to get the second step, all right? So also part of what we're going to be talking about a lot within the subconscious, how do we override it? We have a thing called the higher mind, and the way I explain the higher mind is just like a GPS. So GPS, all essential, the physics of it, you got a satellite in the sky, you have a gadget, right now it's a cell phone, wherever you are, it's transmitting the spot in which you're at. The satellite, then, if you can transmit a frequency setting, it will hit there, and then it will triangulate to where it has to go, understanding where you are and where the destination is, and what it'll do is it'll transmit energy information back, such as make a right, we make a right. If we satisfy that and make a right, it will then award us with the next bit of information, say make a left, and so on and so forth. And then it will move us along the way to the destination we want to go. But it's coming from a place of a higher place, what I call my higher mind, with the satellite is with the GPS. It's the same thing, although a higher mind is a lot stronger, like a satellite system, a GPS is a mere fractal of our higher self. So part of this program that we're trying to convey and get out to people is when we start to trust in our intuition, our higher self, which creates what we call intuition, the technology around us will slowly wade off and we won't have to rely on as much as the technology that we already came here with. We're just not understanding it. It's like having a motorboat with a motor on it, but you're still paddling and not using the motor. So it's kind of, what the premise of, and once you understand that, it can guide you through and override those subconscious thoughts that are no longer working for you. It doesn't mean they're bad. It no longer works for you. Just kind of like when you were a child, you were riding a tricycle, and then you got to a certain age where you had to graduate from the tricycle onto the bicycle. It doesn't mean the tricycle was bad, it was time to move on. What creates the subconscious thoughts to make seem like a life is on track, there's something wrong with life, is we fail to let go of them. We're still trying to run old programming that once worked, but is no longer working. So we're actually, instead of getting rid of the tricycle, I then focus on the bicycle and get on the bicycle. So instead of getting rid of the old programming in the subconscious, what we're going to do is we're going to adapt new subconscious or new programming to download to a subconscious. And one of the good modalities to do that is through meditation and consciousness thinking. The more conscious you are about it, the more you'll override it. If you subconsciously say to yourself, I can't do it, but you consciously hear yourself say that, you can actually slow it down. So consciousness can override it. But the point I'm trying to get to is the point where all the downloads that are in my subconscious are continuously working in my favor. And then when we get to another point in my life, when they're no longer working, I reprogram again. So you're always wanting to shoot for the consciousness state. It's not about, okay, my program's done, I can get rid of my conscious. No, because along the road in which we go, new modalities, new understandings, I should say, new programs are going to be needed. And that can only be done with a conscious mind.
I think a big thing that we're discussing today, or what we're trying to convey, is how to self-regulate. Our bodies are the only thing in life that we, like Frank, you say this all the time, but we don't have a manual for. I love that because we do have a manual, we just don't know it. And the reason we don't know it is a lot of the ways that you find that manual were often ridiculed, outcasted in years and years ago. But we now live in this information age. We now live in this new world where we won't be punished for discussing the topics that we're here for today. We won't be crucified.
Yeah, we could have been burnt at the stake.
To discuss these
Yeah.
concepts that we're so freely allowed to discuss.
Yeah, because for some people right now it might be a little odd or whatever, but and if somebody doesn't like it, they just simply dismiss it, which is kind of nice. Which is letting us know one thing, that the collective consciousness of the planet is rising. All right, so the more, if an individual wakes up and rises, a plethora of other individuals rise. That's how it works. So it hits you that way, and that's why the more we consciously move into a higher level, we actually help those around us move into a lower level. So we can actually help somebody else's subconscious rise above the state for where it to actually work for them rather than against them. And it's self-ridicule is not the way to go. You don't need to say, I'm doing this wrong. I'm like, we're actually not doing anything wrong. We're just having experiences that might not be preferential. Now, that phrase and word, someone could argue with me, but the reason I say it that way is because it has a lighter touch. And if I have a lighter touch and lighten it up and it becomes more enlightened, I play with it, I'm no longer scared of making mistakes, therefore it's just experiences, and I easily let go of it. But if I do something wrong and continuously ridicule myself, I'll eventually get to the point where I want to try again, and I'll just keep going in the same circle over and over. And how do I know this? Because I've lived a portion of my life that way.
The subconscious is the voice inside your head.
Yeah.
So it's that little voice that we hear constantly. We just never knew that we had control over it. So when we analyze what the subconscious is, we need to take a step back and notice that it's something that we've been in control of this entire time. With that being said, the subconscious is important because it does drive the majority of our day. So the subconscious, if we work with this, it can be used, like Frank was saying, to our benefit. It will be the driving force because it is what is running essentially 95% of our day. If it is not, I guess I would say, if it is not intact, what's the word I'm looking for? If the subconscious
Isn't working with us.
yeah, there you go. If the subconscious is not working with us, then well, it's working against us.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. It's almost like anyone could get a computer.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what it is, right? So you get a computer and say, I'm going to utilize a computer for making films and movies, and Mike's going to use it for doing architecture, right? So the downloaded program is going to be different on mine than his, but yet the program, the computer can be essentially the same, right? But what happens is one day I accidentally grabbed his and he grabbed mine. I'm going to have a hell of a day trying to make a movie with blueprints and schematics, and he's going to have a tough time building a building with little film strips on there of me making silly comments. It's like, what the hell is this? So it's kind of what our subconscious, it's the programmable self. Now, that being said, we talk about the 95%. I do understand and do believe at some point in the future that as we become more conscious, we'll actually be awake and conscious all the time. That being said, I am certainly not there myself. I am definitely more conscious than I've been in the past. So if the average person, again, I don't know if I'm over the average person, but say it was 95%. So me and Mike are probably about maybe 90%, leaving 10% of our conscious. And there's no way to measure this. I'm just using this as an example. So I think as humanity goes on, as we become more conscious, the ability to actually have to create a subconscious or download information won't be useful. Just kind of like how computers don't really have much hard drive on anymore because everything's in the cloud. It doesn't need to be stored anymore. That being said, here we are in this place in time where the subconscious, I know, still does run my life. So when it has me going off chasing a squirrel, I have to come back focused to where I can override the squirrel chasing aspect of me so I don't get yelled at by my significant other.
So the subconscious, I don't ever feel it's going to go anywhere, the subconscious. I think it's our role to reprogram, like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
If we program that subconscious to fire the thoughts, the emotions, the actions we want to feel, then run 95% of my life all day long.
Exactly.
That makes it easier on the other 5%.
Well, it does, and because it's actually, because when you look at it, it could work either way. The thing is as physical beings, we are energy, and the one quality that energy has that we know has, it will always and forever move in the path of least resistance. So, like Mike said, if I can have someone do 95% of my work all day, why not? So I'm actually going to put it off to that other thing to have it do it, but when I hire someone to do that 95% of the work, I want to make sure they're doing a proper job. Hence, programming them, giving the information such as subconscious, so we're doing it right. So you don't end up at the end of the day like, what the hell just happened?
And so how do you do that? Well, you look at your subconscious and you say, what is it telling me now? Well, it's every thought you have, it's every comment you make, And it's these little things that we don't realize. So when you say, you know, oh, I'll never be able to get that, you won't ever get that. Even if you don't think that, you right then are telling your subconscious, I don't deserve that. So your subconscious can only do what it's told. It doesn't know truth from, false from truth, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't understand that. So it's important that when we discuss this, we know that we choose to implant whatever thought or whatever feeling we want without the choice of the subconscious. The subconscious may say, oh, no, that's not right. No, I don't believe that. Well, when you work on it enough and you tell the subconscious enough, no, this is the way. I am happy. I am grateful. I am abundant. These phrases are actually programming your subconscious to fire the way you want to on a daily basis. So if you want to be happy, if you want to be wealthy, if you want to be have a great relationship with your significant other, tell yourself that that exists, because it already does. And Frank, you want to jump in on anything like that?
Yeah, it's true, because a lot of times people, and this is where the subconscious is tricky, a lot of times people say, if I had the job, I had the relationship, I would then be happy. But the physics of it is you must be happy in order to have the happy relationship. So the states we're looking for, we're not looking for the outside world, because the outside world is a mere reflection of what's already going on individually as myself, but also there is a collective conscious out there adding to this physical world, so it's not all my doing. So what I have the ability to is add into the world in which I want, and then perceive what's going on around me in the best I can. If I perceive it to be bad, it will continue to reflect back to me bad, and it will then harm me in the action in which I want to go. Because no one wants to feel bad. And the reason no one wants to feel bad is because we are pure love inside who we truly are. Because if we weren't worthy, and someone says you are not worthy, you wouldn't even raise an eyebrow. But because we get hurt by that, something in us saying that is not true. And what I mean is that emotion of feeling bad about, even if I say to myself I'm not worthy, and it feels bad, that emotion is not a punishment, it's actually a safety mechanism. I'm going to explain. It's like if you were driving down a freeway, and you know, you're doing 90 miles an hour, and you get slightly distracted, you got a text on your phone, and you started veering off to the right, and all of a sudden you hear digga 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 digga, and all of a sudden it makes you like, oh my God, I was veering, and it pulls you back. Those grooves on the side of the road, on the shoulder, were a safety mechanism. Because if they weren't there, you would have kept going and probably went into the ditch. So when you look at these emotions, you can actually thank these emotions. But when you're consciously aware of it, like if someone went over and hit that, well, if they hit it at least once or twice, they would understand they need to get back into the center of the road and back into focus. So when I start feeling a bad emotion, I'm at the place right now where I no longer blame the outside world, because I can't rearrange it. It's like trying to fix my hair by touching the mirror. The mirror is showing me that my hair isn't as I like, but I have to then go within, fix it, then reflect back onto the mirror and say, okay, that's what I like. So the consciousness of us is what can change our hair. And then once I change the hair, I look at it in the mirror and say, okay, I like that. The mirror will nearly perpetuate it. It's not the causation of it. So if I'm in a state of love, I will find people around me that love, and then the person I'm with will then perpetuate the love. But they are not the causation, because if they are, this is why most fights start in relationships, because when they do something to upset you, you literally think it was them, but it's not. It's your perception of what they did and what they shouldn't have done that upset you. It was your own working inside. And if you don't understand how the subconscious works, you try to fix the mirror or change the mirror. Some people will take the mirror down, put a new one up, thinking that's going to change the hair, but it doesn't. And that's what you have to understand about the subconscious. So the conscious and the subconscious and the superconscious or higher self all are working in one unit. Just like in the computer, you have the hard drive, the software, and the internet. All three of those are what enable us to operate at its function capacity. And the only reason they were able to make a computer is because the engineers who made it, to some degree, I don't know to what degree, understood how our mechanism of us work. So all these computing and technology are mere fractals. That being said, I believe and choose to look at it, they're helping us to elevate into the next level of humanity and understanding.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's funny you say that. Like, I just recently heard about the new microchips. They realized the amount of data, if you will, that is stored in the water cells of our body.
Yeah.
And they're trying to mimic that within a computer chip.
Yeah.
So they're actually using water to store data, just
And
like the human body. And like you were saying,
water is the delivery. And that's like Mike said earlier about having a manual. Well, what biologists understand now, and I'm not a biologist, I'm only referencing what I've read from multitudes of biologists that I feel that resonate with me, that our DNA is like adding, when we raise our vibration, we hit other parts of DNA we've never hit. So I remember hearing this years ago that we utilize about 5 to 10% of our brain. And then I heard another gentleman say we actually use 100% of our brain, but we only trigger about 10% of the frequency of our DNA. And I'm like, wow, that resonates with me more. So you can look at it either way, but I look at it this way. We're utilizing 100% of our DNA, but we're only hitting 10% of the frequency worth. Now, it doesn't mean we're doing something wrong. Because the way I explain it is I still have 95% of my DNA to go, and that excites me. It's like I'm like a kid at Disneyland and the park. It's 10 o'clock in the morning and it's going to close at 10 o'clock at night or whenever it closes. But if it was 9 o'clock at night and I found out it was closing at 10 o'clock, I'm like, oh, I only have a little to go. So knowing that I'm only at 10% and growing excites me, because the purpose of the experience is never to get it done. It's to enjoy each set of frequencies we go to. And that is the other balancing point. Accept exactly where you are, and the more you accept where you are, the easier it is to reprogram the subconscious. Be present, be now. I know we've all heard this, but there's literally physics tied into this. If you enjoy where you are right now as best you can, if you're having a hell of a day, say, oh, this day sucks, but you change it with, well, it could be worse, you actually elevate it up a level. I'm not saying go from this day sucks to this day's amazing. You know, fake it till you make it works to some degree, but we want to work on the rudimentary understanding. So if I'm having a hell of a day, and I'm like, oh, this is the worst day of my life, and then I consciously hear myself say that, say, well, it's not that bad. Going from it was a bad day to not that bad is a huge leap in the direction in which you want to go. You don't need to get, it was the most amazing day of my life. It's incrementally moving up. It's like if I was hiking up a mountain, the stride I start at the base is going to be the same stride I start and finish at the pinnacle of the mountain. The reason being is my gait is always the same. But if I keep doing that and I keep moving up, I will achieve the top of the mountain where the view is different, not better, but greater. And so humankind isn't to get better, we're to expand into a greater field. Better and worse have positive and negative connotations fighting against each other. So I choose to use greater and better than mathematical term. I mean, greater and less than, because they're mathematical. You know, 5 is greater than 3, but it doesn't mean better. It's how you place it can change the outcome. So greater, less than, preference, non-preference. Again, I'm choosing these, but when I choose them, they're lighter. And the object here is to enlighten yourself in order to move to each level with less weight. When we grab on something, we naturally let go. And that's the premise of the physical world. So it's not about trying to get rid of something. It's about allowing yourself to move towards something. And when you move towards something, when you move to the bicycle, your body naturally gets off the tricycle. And when you move to the car, your body naturally gets off the bicycle. But trying to get rid of the tricycle, you're never going to achieve the bicycle, because how do you get rid of the tricycle? So focus on moving towards something and let the dead bury the dead, so to speak. Don't diminish it. Don't denigrate it, because it served you a great purpose. It really did. You know, and that's kind of the message we're saying here. We're not doing anything wrong other than we think we're doing something wrong. Start to change the perspective. And that's what we're here for, the perspective shift.
The subconscious is perspective.
It is.
So the subconscious, when discussing the subconscious, perspective is everything. It is, this is a good day, this is a bad day. Whatever you tell yourself, it will be that, because we are ultimately creating that. But I guess what I'm trying to say, man, is like, I'm trying to put it into words.
Yeah, so then if you actually are able to change your perspective to one that's more suitable, preferential to you, you naturally, automatically change your subconscious. That's exactly what it is. So that's another modality, even outside of meditation. It's a very effective one. It's just self-talk. When you hear yourself saying, I can't do something, consciously you recognize that. You say, well, why can't I do something? And when you literally say, why can't I do it? You literally go to another perspective. It literally changes your brain activity. There's nothing else to do. Going from life sucks to it's not that bad literally changes your brain activity, which then is the new perspective is offered. Because the higher I get in the mountaintop, or on the mountain, the more of the valley I can see. And if I could see a different valley, I'm seeing a whole new perspective of the valley. That's all we're talking about here, is how we look at it. We're not trying to sell you what valley to look at, what mountain to hike up. I'm not telling you,
There's
need
only
to
one.
meditate. Yeah, exactly. It's
And
the
we're
mountain
all
that's-
there.
It's the mountain you're on.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to tell you must meditate or whatever, but whatever you're drawn to. I'm just personally, meditation helps quiet my mind. The other thing that helps quiet my mind is focus on something like what we call work, or like martial arts. And I call that the waking or moving meditation. When I direct my focus on something, whatever it is I'm doing, the energy field runs through my body and exhilarates, and all of a sudden, I almost know what to do and say intuitively, and that could even work in unison with your subconscious, and then your subconscious picks that up. It's like a new program that you're doing as you're moving, and then you naturally respond that way. So if you got into an argument with someone years ago and your response was to get very defensive and you started yelling back at them, and then later on, like, I don't like the way that felt, and so why did I do that? And you started rethinking it, and the next time an incident like happened, you might have got defensive, but you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna walk away. Even though you're not at this place what we think is enlightenment, I shouldn't never get upset. The fact that one day you were like swinging at the fences, the next day you just got a little upset, means you shifted tremendously, and never discount that. Most people discount it. Most people are trying to get to a place where they're never angry, they're never upset. That will make you angry and upset all the time. If you accept being angry and upset, the mere acceptance washes out the anger and the upsetness. It's a paradox we live in. We live in a paradox world. And when we understand that, doing the opposite. So when you think you ought to cry, start laughing, see what happens, try it. Try and emphasize. If it doesn't work for you, let it go. We're not here to sell you anything. We're here just to give you another perspective in the shifting world in which we live in. Do you like how I keep throwing that
I
perspective
love that. I
shifting?
think that's smart because that's gonna be cool when we cut it up.
Yeah, there you
It
go.
really will
Yeah.
be. Try this. When you wake up in the morning, the first thing that will, oh, well, I should start by saying this. So, a subconscious is usually trapped within the memories of our past. So, when we think, we often will think in the past rather than create a future. So, we get so tied to these memories of our past that it affects every moment of every day through our subconscious that we're not noticing. So try this. When you wake up in the morning, your first thought that you feel rush into your mind, suppress it and replace it with simply, today is great. Today I am loved. Today I will be, or today I am abundant. Whatever affirmation you will that you feel can kind of help you start your day. So that is the training of the subconscious that we're referring to. It is the telling your body that your mind is in control. So when we talk about the subconscious, we're talking about becoming the mind and not allowing the mind to control you, if you will. What's a better way to say
Yeah, well,
that?
no, it is, because we, like our higher self will then control the mind, not the other way around. You don't want the robot in your house to run the household. You want to program the robot in order to function in your house. So, and Mike brought up a really good example of waking up in the morning. One of the reasons the morning is the best time to start this is you're in neutral. When you fall asleep, you actually wash all your worries away. Because even people have the greatest worries in life, you know, that they manifested through their thoughts and stuff like that. We've all been there. When you wake up in the morning, you start stretching, you forgot that you owed the government $5 million, and then you're like, oh, shit. But it took a moment. But in that moment, if you can, like, one modality, one thing I do, people taught me, like, you know, first thing most people do is get up and go into the bathroom, brush your teeth. If you put a note right where you're gonna look in the mirror and say, I am loved, I am, whatever it is, and write down what you, when you read it, you'll actually believe it. And what I mean believe is an emotion attracted to it. Because I could say, I believe I can fly. But if I'm standing on top of a building ready to jump off and my body doesn't feel like a fly, I'm literally lying to myself. All right? So put a statement on there that your body can believe, like you can believe. And what do I mean is when I say it, I actually feel good. Because if I'm on top of a building trying to convince somebody I can fly, I'm actually going to have to give him funeral instructions, because by the weekend, that's what's going to be happening. So I wouldn't do that. That wouldn't be my affirmation. So put something on there, like if you think your life sucks, put like, it's not that bad, you know? Because that's easier to raise up, you know? Don't try to shoot for the stars, because it's like trying to get to the top of Mount Everest from the base camp in 5 minutes. And if someone said you had to get there in 5 minutes, you're not even going to try. Even the greatest mountain climber wouldn't. But why would you do that to yourself? The universe doesn't value anything as better or worse. We do. So to the universe, the base of Mount Everest is just as great as the top. But us humans give it value. We give it depth. We give it struggle. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to climb Mount Everest, you have to look at the ground below your feet and maybe a couple of feet out in front of you. But if you're trying to walk at that thing looking at the top of the mountain, for one, you can't see it. You're gonna trip. So put on the mirror something you could hardly believe in. And what happens after a week or a month, you're gonna up that statement to something else. So Mike's point was great. Start in the morning, you know, if you can't come to the point of saying it to yourself, write it down somewhere, remind yourself. You know, if you have to get a tattoo, no, I'm just joking, because you're gonna change that saying anyway. But whatever you can do, and what happens is, when you're writing the message down, you have to be conscious. So there's your conscious. When you're conscious, your subconscious is now, is opening up. It's almost like press and record. What are you gonna say? And that moment, when you're writing that down physically, your subconscious already sinking in, and you haven't even taped it to the mirror yet. That's how sophisticated the human condition is. So going through all the acts of doing and then putting up, and then when you wake up every day, it's a reminder, when you certainly feel it, then I suggest write a statement that seems even grander than that, and keep going from there, and then one day you won't have to get yelled at for having notes on the mirror. It will already be in the subconscious. And know this, it's forever continuous is what we do. But when we understand it, we actually have fun with it. We actually do. It's like downloading cool apps when they come out.
Mhm.
We don't be like, oh my God, will they stop making apps? This is driving me crazy. No. They keep making them because we, as a collective consciousness, we keep asking for greater things. It doesn't mean we're spoiled. It doesn't mean we're selfish. If you think your life's going to be better when I have a flying car, that's mistaken. Because you don't need a flying car in order to be happy. Be happy, and if everyone around you happy, maybe one day having a flying car will exist because of that, but not the other way around. A lot of people are waiting for something to happen in order to be happy, and that is like going through a one of those conveyor belts. I mean, going around those roundabout ways. Yes, you're covering ground. I mean, you're moving. I could go 10 miles in a circle, but I didn't gain any ground because I end up in the same spot. So just keep in mind, when you feel bad, it's bringing you into a conscious state. And then ask yourself, why do I feel bad about this? Why do I have to believe in this? Do I feel bad about it? And know this, if it was empirically true, you would not one iota ever feel bad. Just like if you were in the middle of the road, you would never hear digga 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 unless you knew danger was about to happen. All right? So if you're in the middle of the road, steadfast, focused, you have nothing to worry about. When we become slightly distracted, unconscious, we have these emotions to bring us back. They are not punishments. The little grooves in the road are not punishments. They're indicators that you're getting off track from the direction in which you want to go. Period.
If you're looking to fundamentally change your life, the subconscious is the only way.
Well, yeah, the conscious mind will program the subconscious, so then you don't have to, so 95% of it.
But I guess what I mean is, so when you're saying, how should I say this? I guess the best way is, if you're looking for true change, a fundamental change in your life, the subconscious will be your greatest friend and your greatest asset. It is the driving force behind every thought, every feeling, and every action that we have during the day. Do you agree?
Yeah, 'cause it's almost like I mentioned with the computer analogy before. So if I just got a raw computer with no software on it whatsoever, all right? Now some people like this; they like to build it up. But if I was already in the plan of making a movie, so I've already images I want to put on there, and someone says, I have a laptop you could already buy with the software already built in and it's actually upgraded, why would I not buy that? That is the path of least resistance. So we upgrade our subconscious. That becomes a path of least resistance to move us in the direction in which we prefer to experience in this journey in life. So yes, the consciousness is the way to change the subconscious, but the consciousness wants to be the driver in the back reading the paper while the chauffeur is driving the vehicle. And why do we want to do that? While the driver's driving, the consciousness can then be looking for greater and expansive things outside of it. So they're working together, all right? Because without the subconscious, the conscious would always have to be continuously focused on the one thing, and then other entities of life will be missed. Isn't it nice that I don't have to tell my right foot to hit the gas and then to hit the brake? Because if I had to consciously do that, I wouldn't be able to listen to music on the radio, or certainly not talk to the person next to me, you know? And that's what we're talking about, programming the subconscious to work for us, be a friend, not our foe. Because sometimes it feels like a foe, and the only reason it's a foe is because we just misunderstand it at times. And even our explanation of it here is still a perspective onto it. It's like seeing a signpost for the beach and it's pointing in a certain direction. The signpost is not the beach, it's an indicator. So everything from the 4 laws we talk about to the subconscious, the high conscious, these are indicated parts that we're naming, but really don't explain it, but they help you wrap your mind around it. So they, you know, because you really can't put a label on it.
The subconscious can be either your best friend or your worst enemy.
Absolutely.
So when you're looking at the subconscious, look at it from the, ask yourself who's in control. Well, you would say, I'm in control, right? But then really sit back and ask yourself, sorry, I was trying to approach it from the sense that, like, we all think we're in control of our subconscious, but I always thought I was in control of my subconscious, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
once it clicked for me, I
yeah.
understood what really becomes.
Or at some level we are in charge of our subconscious, but our beliefs disallow us from expanding our subconscious.
Okay.
So, like, in other words, I was in control of the tricycle, but my belief says I can't go beyond the tricycle. So now, beyond the age of like 5 or 6, a tricycle then can seem somewhat cumbersome, non-effective to what it is I want to do. And even if you never saw a bicycle, you're gonna realize at some level this isn't effective of a form of transportation. You almost find that walking would be easier. But yet, this is what makes us reach, because, you know, years ago, a horse and buggy was a noted good form of transportation. But if you were going across the plains of America, heading out west, and you saw a Ferrari drive by, for it would look weird if you're on a horse and buggy. But all of a sudden, you're like, what? Like, what am I on this for? But if that's all you knew around, but yet there was a sense of these pioneers that it could be more efficient, it could be better, because even the people that built the Ferrari are still building it more efficient and greater. I don't use the word better, but greater. It's the natural expansion, and again, the 4th law is, what did I say? Change is the only constant, and change is expansion. Now, again, you can expand in a positive way or a negative way, all right? I could look at $5 and I could tell myself I am abundant, and if I do so, that 5 will then turn into 10, then to 100, and yada, yada, yada. Or I could look at, say, $5 and say I'm poor. Well, that 5 will soon disappear and then turn into $5 of debt and $50 of debt. Nothing remains the same. It's always expanding. But are we expanding in a preferential direction or a non-preferential direction? And that's where the subconscious, when we learn to program it, we can get to work us, move us in the direction. And when it's in unison with our consciousness and then our higher self, when the higher self tells us information, what happens is, if our subconscious is working against us, it's going to fight us, and that becomes the devil, and we listen to it. But if your subconscious is working along with your higher conscious, you do it. So I was subconsciously taught right from left, right? I was taught this as a young boy at school. This is right, and this is left. So when I'm driving my GPS and it says make a right-hand turn in 50 yards, I don't have to think about it. My subconscious on the right-hand turn, as I do it. The GPS is the higher program. See how they're working together? So the subconscious is the habitual physicality of the body. The conscious or higher conscious is inputting information for the subconscious to work. But if no one told me what a right-hand turn is and it said, make a right, I'm like, what the hell's a right? Now I gotta pull over the car, pull out the Webster Dictionary and look up the word right-hand turn in order to proceed. So it's nice that we're building this subconscious database of information that's going to be useful for our journey ahead. So a higher self will say make a right, but if I don't know what a right hand turn is, that bit of information doesn't do me any good. And that's kind of the what Mike was trying to, or was getting at. Actually, he got at. So it was just a different way of looking at it.
How do we change? How do we, or no, I shouldn't say it like that. What's the best way to say how do we fix our subconscious?
Well, let's look at it like we don't need to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
just like we don't need to fix the tricycle.
Okay.
We'll go from that place. Because we don't need to fix it, we need to shift and add new things in. It's almost like, and this is me and you talking, so we're gonna.
Yeah, well,
we're gonna edit
that's
out
a lot of this will
Yeah.
be cut, yeah.
So think about it and express it like this. If you had an iPhone, or any phone for that fact, and you had an app on it that that was functional, using it, say it was a GPS app, and sometimes that glitches or it didn't get you within the block of the place and you finally found it.
Mm-hmm.
But then a year later, another app came out that was supposed to be more superior, more sophisticated, more at point. What you do is you download that app. You don't get rid of the other app. You keep it. Then you start using the other app, and you realize, wow, this one is more superior. Even if you don't get rid of that app, it no longer is privy. It doesn't, like, oh, I gotta get rid of the app, you don't need to get rid of it. Because even if you do get rid of the app, it goes back into the app store. Just because you get rid of it, Apple doesn't get rid of it. It still exists. So it's not about getting rid of it, it's about grabbing onto something. So follow that trace in there.
What did you do to find, how did you get your subconscious? That's what I'm trying to say. So I want to go into explain like what I did to change my subconscious.
Well, I was aware of it, the first and foremost, which everyone is the awakening point.
Okay.
It's not working. It's not working as efficiently as it should be, even though I know what that's supposed to be. Even the kid on the tricycle that may have never seen the bicycle knows there's another vehicle out there that's going to move smoothly.
And that's the feeling everybody watching has.
Absolutely,
That's
because they
the
wouldn't be
reason you're
watching
watching.
this.
Yeah.
Unless you just, stuck at the DMV wasting your time. Which by all means watch.
Like that.
Yeah.
But like how one action step I took when I knew that this feeling was out there was moving towards that good feeling, that positive feeling.
Yeah.
So how did I get that positive feeling? And it began with not only meditation, etc., but looking, because like we said, perspective is your subconscious, how you look at it. So I started listening to different people. Some of my favorite, I guess you could say philosophers, you could say...
Yeah, and to tie this in what we're talking about, why that happened was, it's not that the philosopher or the meditation was the causation of your subconscious changing or your awakening. You had woken, and the impulse said, listen to Alan Watts, listen to this person, listen to that person. You were already there. It's like when you get to the library, that's when you pluck the books off the table, not before. It wasn't the books that got you to the library, it was you were in the library and the books happened to be there. So realize that you chose at a level to say, I'm done with this. And once you were done with this, your higher self said, try this on for size. And you did it. And then all of a sudden you're like, and we naturally want to give the causation of our awakening to a guru. But the only guru is yourself. You are your own guru. We are our own guru. Because I might use an Eckhart Tolle, an Alan Watts, a James Allen as a permission slip to understand them. But the truth is, when I read their books for the first time, it was as if I understood it fully. Why? Because the source and where they got the information to, I am privileged to. I have the same DNA I might have not struck the same DNA they have.
We all
it's
connect to
differently,
that source.
but we're all tied into this. Some people call it the Akashic Records. The Matrix is a field, and in technology it's called the cloud. So every bit of information is already stored. Now, the cloud in which we live in, something has to happen for it to be stored in. But the Akashic Records, or the Matrix, when I talk about it, there are things that are stored there that humans haven't even experienced. And, I've used this analogy before. So, we live in a world where we experience things in a linear perspective. But the truth is, it's an experience. It isn't empirical. We live in a quantum universe. That being said, it's multidimensional. There's a facet of time that we added into it, into linear perspective. So we like to tell stories from the beginning to the end, and some of us like to say from you switch around. But yet there's a linear seeming movement. And linear just means, in my eyes, a traveling point. So we can experience travel. That being said, when Beethoven pulled out his Ninth Symphony, right next to it, and I'm just saying this for dramatic sense, was Stairway to Heaven. But it took many years later before likes of Jimmy Page and Robert Plant had plucked it. But it was already waiting on the shelf. At the same time, the Ninth Symphony, in which was conducted by Beethoven. So Beethoven didn't create it. He simply discovered it and placed his frequency touch on it, making it his and making it known to the world. Einstein's equals MC squared was always there in the matrix. He discovered it, plucked it out, and then laid it out for us to understand. Led Zeppelin plucked out Stairway to Heaven, so on and so forth. And every individual listening to this and around the planet has their own Ninth Symphony equals MC squared and Stairway to Heaven in them. We didn't come here to duplicate somebody else's. We are our own individual piece of the puzzle of a tapestry in front of us. You wouldn't have came here if you didn't have your own discovery to pluck out of that infinite place of the matrix. Now, you might not be as famous as Jimmy Page or Robert Plant, Einstein, and at this point in life, I don't know who would want to be, especially with all the social media stuff. Me and Mike aren't trying to be famous. We just find information, sharing it. I still want to be able to go to Starbucks, even though I don't drink coffee that much, and not be bothered. I like my privacy. But that being said, I'm compelled to share this information as best I see it. Do not take what I say as truth. Go experience it, make your own truth. We're not telling you what to believe. We're just laying out as best we can how the physics of the body and the universe which we're in right now work. So it's almost like we're teaching you how to drive a car. We're not telling you what car to buy, and we're certainly not telling you where to go with the car. That is entirely up to you, and it's only your business. We're just laying out how to drive the car. If you're in Europe, the wheel's on the right side. If you're in America or other parts on the left side, that's the only difference, if you want to, just make fun of that. But all cars essentially drive the same, and what I mean is you control steering and you control acceleration and deceleration. Everything else is just an add-on to the vehicle you're in. We don't care what vehicle it is. When you get down to knowing how to drive, then it's up to you what car you take and where you go. No one should ever tell you what you should drive and where you should go, because then you're not living your life. You're just replaying Stairway to Heaven, which has been done before.
I think it's important that we recognize that when we talk about consciousness, awakening, enlightenment, we're talking about self-regulating, how to regulate. So to awaken, to become enlightened, it begins with the subconscious. So focus on the subconscious, plant the right ideas in the subconscious, feel and get to know what that subconscious is to you. Like Frank and I were talking about meditation is a great way, but I think it's Tibetan. In Tibetan, is meditation means is translated to become familiar with. So become familiar with yourself, and then put the ideas that you want to see come in your future, or the feelings you want to feel them now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just it. So, and we're gonna have more transmissions. This first transmission, we pretty much laid everything out, and I think as we go on, we're gonna actually narrow it down. This is just broad perspective of it, but it really is. It's like what enlighten means. The way I look at enlighten, it means to lighten up. Don't take too serious. And going back to the first law, and when I say you exist, it means you're eternal. Yes, this corporeal body is going to die. That is no news to anybody. But the truth is, we've already died many times before. And I don't mean in past lives. I mean in this physical world in which we linear perspective. I was once 15 and now I'm in my 50s, right? Well, the question I have to ask someone to actually at least help their mind to wrap around the fact that we're eternal. You were once 15. Where is that 15-year-old body? It's what the question I want to ask you. Because biologists will explain to us that every 7 years you get a completely new body. Everything from your toenail to a new heart to a new brain. So we now can wrap around that we are eternal. But we didn't know it, that we changed to a new body, until I was flipping back to my high school pictures and I looked at it and I'm like, wow, what happened? You know? So there was the awareness of looking back that made me realize that 15-year-old body is no longer here. My 5-year-old body is certainly no longer here. Where did that go? When did it die? I didn't even feel it. When we leave this corporeal continuous experience, it will feel the same. There will be traits of you that will go along with that outside this. Just like there was something in this 50-year-old something body that was in the 15-year-old body, but now it's here. It was always expanding. That is the eternal aspect of it. It's almost the light in the projector was always there. It was the film going across that's always changing. Does that make sense? So you already experienced death many times. So find out your life and divide it by 7. That's how many deaths you've had. According to biologists, I'm not a biologist, so I can't really verify that, but I've heard a lot of saying that. So if you take your number and divide it by 7, you know, that's how many times you've died. Did you notice it? Yeah, when you look at your yearbook picture, you're like, damn, you know, or however you reacted to it. But you know something changed and you're no longer in that shell. Understanding that you're eternal, lighten up. You just had an experience. It's not the end of the world. Don't try to get it done. In the act of not trying to get it done, you actually speed up the process. And the paradox is, things that you want to experience move towards you quicker. Just like when you were a child. You went to the playground, next thing you know, your mom was screaming to come in for dinner, and you left at breakfast time. Because you were lost in that place in which we're talking about. When you get your subconscious right, along with your consciousness and your higher consciousness, you will live in the state of a childlike state. Not childish. Childish things waste energy. I'm talking childlike state, the state in which we're in. As a child, we had innocence on the side, but as we age, we have wisdom that can override and get us back into a childlike state. This is my perspective, and I believe Mike shares his perspective. So, thank you. Do you have anything to add to this for the evening?
If you find yourself ever questioning that you're eternal, just remember that it's a scientific if you ever find yourself questioning whether or not you are eternal, which we all do when we think about death, it's a scientific fact that energy cannot be destroyed. So remind yourself that, and
And yeah, if you're energy,
We're solely energy.
Yeah.
That is, this living body that we are in and perceiving is nothing. It isn't in the grand scheme of things. We are solely energy.
yeah. But just like this is a vessel like a car, by all means, take care of your car. If you run into a tree, your car isn't going to be much value to you. So do the best you can to protect the car, but at the same time, don't lock it up in your garage because you don't want to get dented, right? Because then there's no traveling to be done. All right. Well, from me and Mike,
Thanks, guys.
We liked. Thanks for coming out, and again, what's
Check us out on what?
Yeah.
Check us out on what is it? Perspective shift. I keep looking.
Perspective shift. That's what we're all about. So
Thanks again, guys.
change of shift and perspective.
Absolutely. Thanks for checking out Perspective Shift.
Yeah. All right.
So
We can.
what we did though that was good was so much flowing where there are certain parts from everything that can be applied.